Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Why Should AI Pricing Be on Your Roadmap for 2025? So today I'm going to talk about this topic together with my colleague, who I will introduce shortly. We are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you have any questions or topics that you want to bring in or like to discuss, please do so that we can address them by the end of this presentation. Hopefully, we can dive to the next sheet, and then we can discuss all the topics that we are going to handle today. So the first one that we are going to discuss is the introduction of our journey into AI pricing. So we have done, of course, by now some trajectories, and we of course received some learnings out of those. So we like to share that with you and to discuss what are the outlooks and how do we need to deal with the circumstances that we are in. The second topic that we are going to discuss is about the global and the economical factors. So how do we take like our global vision and turn that into like actions that we have to take locally? So from a kind of global to local perspective, and to understand what is it that we need to keep our attention across. Then we want to discuss some pricing challenges for AI solutions. So what is then for the businesses that we support, what is the questions and the challenges that they hope to solve with an AI in their pricing process. Then we will hand over the floor to Andy, my colleague, who will talk you through the misconceptions about AI. So we, of course, by supporting those businesses, we also have talked with a lot of employees to understand, like, how do you look at AI? What is your experience? What is like the assumptions that you already have made, to really understand what is like the dynamic that we are working across. So that will be handled in the fourth topic. And the fifth topic is the trademark that we work by, that's Hyperlearning. So to elaborate on how do we combine the human and machine perspective, and how do you bring that to your pricing solution, and of course to your organization. And finally, we want to dive on a business case, just to finalize on that, and also tell you a little bit how we work with optimizations models, and if they are able to outperform your current pricing process, yes or no. And finally, then, of course, to dive into the questions. So that's it. Let's dive in and get to the first topic. So I think in general, what's always nice to see is the trend. Where are we at as a society, and how is AI pricing actually presented in the world? And as what you can see here is that AI pricing never had that much attention as well we are now. So we're quite steep curve in terms of the search queries that people want to know, like, what is AI pricing? How can I use it? Is it something valuable to my business or whatsoever? And based on this information, we can already make some references, right? So because if we talk about a hype, and definition of a hype is that it becomes really popular quite quickly, but that we have not really identified, like, how is that value then eventually, how can we monetize on it, right? So how does it land to the organization? And that's a perfect way to introduce like the Gartner hype cycle, because what you see here is kind of the introduction of that cycle, right? So if you look at that cycle, then the beginning of the Gartner hype cycle is quite steep. So there's quite a lot of buzz around a specific word. People are looking for it, organization, and start to think about the capabilities that are in a specific technology or whatsoever, and then see if that can land for the organization. Although there is like a peak of expectations whatsoever, then they identify what the tooling can do for them as an organization. And of course, it's never straightforward. I buy the product today and I can use it tomorrow, and the monetization is the day after. It takes some time, of course, to understand the technology, the business, your own perspective, then bring that all together, get the nuance in, and then probably you will land somewhere, and then you get like the middle line, and that is kind of the continuation stage, and that can be slightly increasing, of course, each year, because the adoption is just continuing throughout the world and throughout the business cycle. For now, we of course identify that there's quite a steep growth in the attention towards AI pricing. We also identify that organizations start to understand that if your data is not yet really good organized, and that AI can become a challenge to use, and then it drops a kind of a little bit back. So there's less, let's say, a hype across it, and then it gets into the normal phase. So what we try to pull out this information as an understanding how we view the world, right, and how we see like the competitive field across pricing, and should be we worried about circumstances, then of course the answer is no. But what you do see is that once you have this steep of a increase in attention to a specific technology, then the technology has made its introduction, right? So it's here to stay. Some organizations can utilize on the technology quite quickly, others will be a little bit later, but this is no else with other technologies that have come to the forefront, where businesses are working with. It's just good to understand and to be aware that, all right, we have made the introduction. People are aware that there are capabilities and possibilities of the deployment of AI in pricing, and now we are on our journey to see how we are going to land that in the business, and which like capabilities and spin-offs we can generate from that. And that is something that we like to elaborate, of course, on with you during this presentation. For today, I'm speaking together with my colleague Andy Glenwright. So he's the head of sales for us here at Simpson. He has a lot of experience with the talks that he already had with clients, understanding their, let's say, misconceptions, and what he's also addressing as a topic, and the businesses that he has supported. He will dive into the operational side of things, and how businesses have perceived this journey, and how they are coming about it. And myself, I'm Vincent Geelink. I'm the CEO of Simpson, and I will elaborate on the strategic part of it and how we look at the global view and bring that back to the organization, and how we look at the deployment of AI in our business. So to understand the business context where we are operating in as a business as a whole, it's always good to take into consideration how our environment is operating and what the environment requires from us as a business, right? So if we look a few years back, then we can say that before COVID, we had a nice upward trending economy with some setbacks, but nothing like severe what we had to overcome. So we just had a nice progression where we had like more or less stable growth business activities. And once COVID came in, we were just presented with unprecedented circumstances where we needed to adopt as a business. So what we have learned from that time, and just to name a few criteria, is that we saw a quite hectic change in terms of the value chain, right? So we saw reallocation of capital because out of COVID, we saw that we, for instance, could not travel anymore. That money is used for other things, as that people bought a lot of different products, and the product market for the product production industry, but also for retailers and wholesalers who sold these types, and manufacturers who sold these products. We saw steep increases in the numbers and the requests that they could get. That meant that we saw that there was like more capital than products that were available. In general, of course, that means that we see inflation, and that was actually the next step that we have seen. So we saw a disturbance of that supply chain by reallocation, of course, a different way we operate as humanity. Then we saw that there was more capital available for a limited amount of goods, what eventually delivered a lot of inflation, also with lower monetary restrictions, or let's say the monetary policy was quite loose. In that period of time, we saw just also a lot of inflation, meaning that prices went up. If we then analyze the figures of the bigger businesses and businesses overall, we see that volumes actually over time declined due to the higher prices. And the other side of that was, of course, the increase then in the pricing. Now we see that we are moving to the position that we see that the consumers are getting more squeezed, right? So everything has become more expensive. Wage growth, we have seen that as well. But now we are on a level that the growth of the cost of living is, and the wage growth is that the wage growth is not outpacing the growth of the cost of the goods and the services that we consume. So actually people are, let's say, worse off. And now we see that there's just less consumption overall. And that then has an impact on the economy, because if we don't consume that much with each other, it also means that there is less demand for stuff. And then that just means that the pie shrinks. And when the pie shrinks, more or less, that is like a prerequisite to get to fall into a recession. And I think this is also something that we hear all the time in the news, that the chance on a recession is quite high, and that we see that it's coming in. Well, if you take these types of reports, for instance, of JP Morgan Research, then you already see that they also identify that there is a 45% probability that we would have a recession by the end of 2025. And if you look at the previous reports and in other leading economists, then we see predictions that are even more aggressive. But the line, like if there will be a recession, is also increasing, and each month it's a little bit more severe. So I think that it tells us that the business outlook, it was already volatile in the last 4 years. I think for the years to come, we don't expect that the business climate is going to be gentle for us, right? So that it is really stable and that we can just continue building business. We really have to be keen on all the circumstances that we are dealing with, plus the environment and the variables that we need to deal with are just increasingly volatile. And that tells us as a business that we also need to be agile on our processes. And for us, that means then that we want to enable businesses to be agile on the pricing as well to cope with these circumstances that they need to operate in. And to do so, we just checked with the businesses that we support and just have identified what are the drivers that they use most in their models to get a good overview of how they should position yourself. Well, most of you know is that if you look at the bigger large language models, as what we call them, then you can have like generative AI, right? And generative AI in terms of reasoning, like if I give you a data set, what is your analysis considering this data set? If I want to achieve outcome X, that is something that an AI can generate across, right? So if you give a specific AI agent that uses an LLM as a reasoning engine, then you can just give it some variables to understand your business context. And from that perspective, we just analyze like what is like the biggest or the main drivers that organizations now want to use to get that answer out of a specific agent. Now, what we see is like if we look at economical factors, we see the GDP. So in terms of do we have an increase in GDP, or do we have a neutral GDP or a decrease? Can even be more specific, that you take a GDP per capita. There are different, let's say, metrics how you can go about it. Then we can look at the inflation rate. So how more expensive are products actually becoming? So to understand more or less, the availability of capital across of humans, and of course the production sites, and if the basic resources, the resources that go in materials, if they go up or down, and of course also the unrest in the world. So is transportation consuming more because we have like fights in the Red Sea and that they have to go across Africa to deliver goods towards Europe? So these are things that we can take into consideration if we look at the inflation rates. And then the final one is the interest, and the interest is just the monetary policy. So it's funny to see, but you hear that central banks, for instance, are lowering their capital interest rates, but you see that because the interest rates that we eventually pay is a combination of the what central banks set and what the private market is setting. And although the central banks are lowering it, then we still see an increase in those interest rates. So meaning that we see more uncertainty in that sense how businesses want to go about it, and that we just need more higher rates across the 10-year or 20-year or 30-year loans that we give. But the interest rates tell us a little bit about how loose or how tight monetary policy is. And depending on those circumstances, it also tells us a little bit how big the pie can become. Because if these monetary policies are really loose, then we get a big pie. If those monetary policies are really tight, then you can also assume that we have a little less big pie to share with each other. Then we have the next step, is the volatility of currency exchange rates. Was always already important, of course, for businesses that did business across different continents and borders. Lately, we have seen, for instance, a really strong dollar. And then if you have a dollar that appreciates against other currencies, then that means something, that if you do some trades in different parts of the world, that you have to be keen on how that influences your business results. So that is another factor that we see with the bigger organizations that are taking into account. The other one are the trade agreements and the tariffs. I like the example of the Chinese electric cars, because there are a lot of in the news, and I think it resonates to most of the people who join this session. So what we see is that within Europe, but also in the US, we see that governments are asking like a higher tariff to get those cars into the continent, right? So meaning that Chinese producers just have to pay a premium to get those cars onto the market, so that we have a more equal playing field for the producers within Europe that maybe have to pay more higher prices for the production and for the resources of the car, so that there's like a more equal playing field. And how more of those tariffs and trade agreements are made, it tells you something about like how dynamic the market at that current state is, and if we have like a constant nice development business market, or that it is actually becoming quite volatile, and that we see like some disturbance in certain domains. And the final one is that what we see is that there are a lot of business reports and outlooks that are produced by economical experts. You can use these reports and outlooks. Of course, you have a lot of opinions in the market, so you should be keen on who you follow, and where you are willing to trust their research capabilities. But you can use, of course, these inputs to get an outlook towards the future and to digest that your analysis capabilities using an LLM. Then we can dive into the price challenges that they try to solve with all these variables, right? So how do you set prices across, for instance, if you have 10,000 SKUs, you are managing multiple countries, multiple sales channels. If you are in the B2B, you have a bunch of customer segmentations. We always say like, look at your pricing organization and the number of price points that you want to actively manage. And how much price changes then you want to do, right? So just to give a quick example, if I have 10,000 SKUs, I'm active in 3 different countries, and I have 5 different customer groups per country. It means that I have 15 different customer groups that I serve, probably with different price lists. And if I then have like 10,000 products, it means that I'm managing 150,000 price points. Well, if I can change those prices once a quarter for assumption, it means that we need to manage 600,000 price changes on a yearly basis. And then we look at our pricing organization and see if we are able to do that in such a way that it fits within our capabilities, but also in our governance structure to push those prices on new levels into the market. It's intense. You need to do a lot of research for it, and you have to have the operation in place, of course, and you have to know in what circumstances you are dealing that. And if you have to do the analysis across countries and then also across sales channels and customer groups, etc., then that exercise comes quite extensive to execute. So it really helps to have systems and reasoning, for instance, with an AI engine, to support you in that decision-making process and just to speed up that process, so that you can actually have as much as possible of those 600,000 price points on the active price management, instead of that it becomes, for instance, static pricing, that it is just a cost-based plus model instead of an optimized pricing approach. The second step is that we see that organizations now are challenged with maintaining the profitability, but also their growth. And as mentioned, like now we see that the monetary policy is becoming more tight, and we see a less attractive business circumstances. It means that we have to think differently about how we go about it. So if we have tighter monetary policies, it also means that the pie is less big. So margin erosion or maybe less volume is a result of that, right? So sometimes you just have to adjust to new market circumstances, instead of that you think that you are losing business to other competitors, but you are just dealing in a different circumstances from an economy perspective. And that helps to redefine your price strategies, because if you are losing business or the market is just shrinking, in both situations you can have a different approach across pricing, but also in your company strategy. And the third one is manual pricing with Excel limits, and that you want to do, like, say, more smart pricing strategies. So what we also see is, if you are coming from an Excel organization and you are now managing your pricing in Excel and you want to go to a more smart pricing approach, that is a trajectory and a change management that you have to go by. So it's obviously not a step that you can take in a day, but it is just a challenge people want to take. But if they take a step today, they just want to make a step that's already prepared preparing them to make that final step of the newest developments that are going on, and maybe part of that is in AI pricing. The fourth one is that we see the race to the bottom. So besides that, we see that the economy is contracting, so that we just see less of that the pie is shrinking, and that the pie is less big. The other one that we see is that there are also some organizations that are filled with debt, right? So the general consensus in the market is that we see is that the trajectory of growing to infinity and beyond, that philosophy or so is more or less gone, right? So a lot of organizations now have to position themselves to be just EBITDA positive, or get just make sure that you are financially capable of running your own business, instead of being reliable on additional funds and fees and investments that need to go into the business. So that also means that for the businesses that that are struggling, that they will be more aggressive with their pricing, and that's the circumstances that you are dealing with as well. So to better understand your customer segments, your products, and how you can sell your products against what price, or asking the right price to the right consumer or customer at the right time, becomes really, really important to separate yourself from the other businesses, and don't fall into the trap of, when you have a declining market, that you just are repricing all the way down, and then eventually that you eventually leave out the margins and the growth of your own business, and that you just are a market participant, instead of organizing your business from your own strength. And the last one, of course, is that you want to do something effective with loyalty and promotions, and this always has been a challenge to organize quite well. But it helps that AI can help you to give you some advice in what direction to search for, and that you can optimize models and run A/B tests to eventually identify what approach works best for your organization. All right, so if we then look at the approach to get there, then we more or less identify 4 steps that you have to take as a business, and it really maybe helps you as an organization to look at yourself and see how you are going to do it. So, of course, the first step is to work with AI, is that you have your data well organized. In most businesses where we interact with, or where we have our partnerships built across, is that we see is that they use ERP systems, CRM systems, or financial systems, and those systems already help them to categorize data in a kind of way that helps us to run the model. So be aware that if you have a system within your organization, that right data registration is really a key driver to eventually overcome price challenges, and it just helps you in many more ways than that. But just be keen upon that with your organization, that you kind of force the organization in such a way that they work neatly with the data registration, and that is the basic element of the business, and that those fundamentals are in place to eventually utilize on the capability of the technologies and the capabilities that it brings to push your business to the next level. The next step is then to, once the data is well organized, to start to automate a process, right? Because automation of a process can easily be activated once the data organization is well set. So we do that with the price optimization process in our organization. So for us, it's for instance, like if you look at businesses that still work with Excel, is the Excel data well organized in their current systems? If that answer is yes, then we can also start to automate that in a tool, and then eliminate the Excel, so that we can free up time, because that process then becomes an automated thing. Then the next step is, once you have that in place and you have the pricing process in place, and that kind of runs. So it means that we can start with the optimization, meaning that we can do machine learning models on top of an existing models. Machine learning models don't consume quite a lot of data, so it can be a limited amount of data, and you can still do the analysis in terms of how that data is processed, and the results can be verified. So that really helps to get the organization going. And then you have already 3 building blocks that lead up to the final step. And then the final step is the incorporation of, for instance, a large language model that serves you as an AI. Once you deploy then the AI makes always use of the data source that you give it. So if that is step 1, and step 4 is delivering a result, it already helps you with the reasoning why a result comes out of that specific question or setting of a business, right? Because you know the input building blocks for the answer that you have received. But because you also have a process optimization and also machine learning, the reasoning for you to understand how AI is processing data and is coming to a result, besides that you can ask the AI, how did you get to that result? It also helps you to identify where in the process there's even more optimization possibilities, but also that it helps you, of course, as an organization to have a certain kind of grip and control across that process, what can help you eventually also with your governance structure. So in these 4 steps, we really see that it is a simplistic way of helping organizations to get those steps in. Of course, there's more nitty-gritty details and steps that we can do in between, but in let's say the red line and big steps that you can take are identified in these 4 steps that we have presented here. Then we can see the roadmap. So what are then the 5 steps that we need to take as a business if we want to define a roadmap for 2025 to get our business going? Then our first advice is what I just said, is to start to organize your data. Then the second one is, how can we identify different segments in the data that we have so that we can allocate the right data to the right segment to do some things, right? And with that right data to the right segment, we can, for instance, start to do a product and customer segmentation. So what are the products that we need to segment? What are the customers that we need to segment? And how do we combine those two to get towards a, for instance, effective price strategy? So knowing your customer segments, knowing the products that are bought in that specific segment and which products are then really popular and where they are price sensitive, so they are really aware of how a price point is perceived by the market, and the products where we see that they are not so sensitive across the price because they are not that price conscious on that specific price product, really helps you to make a distribution of your margin mix. And with that margin mix distribution, you can also define a price strategy, because different price strategies help you to position yourself as an organization differently and contributes to the profitability of your business. So you can do that with a pricing strategy, with a pricing strategy AI specialist. So the specialist can help you to say, like, okay, these are the price strategies that you can choose from based on this specific product, on this specific customer segment with this specific data set. I advise you to do, for instance, price elasticity with a utility to optimize for the margin. That can be a strategy that can be advised by the pricing agent, and then the final step is then to deploy that into your pricing tooling, and then you can just monitor results, and that's the 5th step. So continuously optimize your results by the AI and the machine learning output. So once you have the results in, analyze it, make sure that you understand what the data represents, and if that's still in the right economical cycle, and then do a revisit of that, and then optimize, of course, your price points, so with that profitability on revenue side or margin side of your organization. Then I will give the floor to Andy, who will talk a bit about the misconceptions of AI and what we have come across in the businesses that we support today.
Great. Cheers. Thanks, Vincent. So yeah, I'm Andy Glenwright. I'm the head of sales. I think it's fair to say that AI is everywhere right now. If you scroll up and down on LinkedIn, it won't take you long before you come across an article or a webinar, and companies touting the next big thing when it comes to AI. What we're seeing is that AI has been adopted in really cool areas of businesses, such as obviously marketing and customer services. And there seems to be a little more hesitation when it comes to pricing. There's obviously a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest, but pricing is definitely a core area within a business where methods tend to feel understood. It's very much the case of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But what we work with all our clients, it's not about trying to fix things, it's about trying to improve and trying to give insight. When I joined the firm back at the beginning of March, I pretty much dove headfirst into the world of pricing and the broader world of AI. I think initially my experiences with AI are quite similar to a lot of the companies that we speak to. Was pretty much limited to using the likes of ChatGPT for writing emails. But of course, with using ChatGPT for writing an email, you still need to tell it what to do. It just obviously gives you a far better outcome when it comes to what you want to say and obviously how you want to present. A lot of my questions that I've been asking very similar. A lot of my skepticism is very similar to obviously what we hear on a daily basis when we're having conversations, when we're starting to approach and actually look at how can AI drive and really help improve a business processes and efficiencies. Is AI going to take over my role? How do you make it stop? Can you make it stop? AI is only for large corporates, it's not for small SMEs like me. How can we trust it? How is AI going to work for me? How's it going to help me? If we look at, and I know that Vincent's already touched on it, a lot of companies are currently using Excel to obviously manage thousands of SKUs across multiple countries, multiple channels, etc. There's lots of different areas, lots of different personnel that are involved within pricing. You've got your pricing manager, your sales manager, your category manager. You've got the FD that's obviously tracking all of the performance against the bottom line. AI is smart, but it only responds to smart questions and smart questioning. What I have learned though is that AI is not going to take over. It's not a plug and play solution that will turn either your pricing strategy upside down or revolutionize your business overnight. And it's certainly not going to make anyone in pricing redundant. Pricing really helps to get that element of support. It can really help to support the pricing manager handle a lot of those daily laborious manual tasks or repetitive tasks, so that the pricing team or the category managers can really focus on more strategic areas and interesting aspects of data and also pricing. AI is a tool. It's an enabler. It isn't going to build your strategy for you, but it can obviously help you to execute it. It has the power to process vast amounts of data, far more than any human brain can or teams can collectively. It can help you to automate those daily tasks, but like with ChatGPT, it needs clear objectives to work efficiently. So then really the question doesn't become what can AI do for me? It's really about what are you trying to achieve? Do you want to get greater market share, higher margins? Are you trying to improve the efficiency? Once your business goals are clear and once your objectives are clear and once you've started to build that roadmap, it's really about how can AI support you and how can AI help you to improve the efficiency and obviously help you to achieve those goals more quicker. So the concept and the potential of AI isn't about transforming everything overnight. It's about empowering your teams, empowering the relevant departments within the business. It's about helping you to redefine all of your processes and allowing more focus and more time to really help you to achieve your objectives, be it either revenue growth and or margins. So how do we work with firms and how do we really help you to kind of execute your vision? So we call it hyperlearning. So if we break that down, well, let's obviously look at the learning element. So every single business is a learning business. A learning business is one that obviously gathers feedback to either help you to try and improve your processes, improve your products, improve your customer customer relations, but also to try and stay competitive as well. So this feedback might come from customers, from employees, through product returns, or any issues that may arise. Traditionally, in the past, learning was mostly based upon people's experience and direct feedback, with not a lot of help and not a lot of input from technology. Move forward to today and what's available. Technology is now a big part as to how organizations are learning. It helps gather and obviously analyze feedback in more advanced ways, allowing for smarter and faster improvements. There's obviously lots of different feedbacks and learnings that a business can have. So you've obviously got your customer feedbacks, you've got your market trends, so looking at what's popular in the market, and sometimes a lot more important, what are your competitors doing? You've also got your employee insights as well. I know that a lot of companies do a lot of yearly review and yearly feedback forms, and then obviously you've got the likes of your product data as well. So information from your product sales, your returns, or your demands that obviously help you as a business understand what's really resonating with your customers. So then what we look at is you really want to turn that feedback into actionable insights. So today, feedback can be gathered, as we said, from people and also automated sources. Really, we're trying to turn it into useful information that guides your decision making. So we're really trying to quantifying as well that human feedback. So with technology, we can take insights from customers or employees and turn them into data, which helps you as businesses and kind of other organizations rely less on gut feeling, more on solid information. So what you want to try and do, and what we work with all of our clients, is you really want to start to build a model to make smarter decisions. So what we do first of all is you want to build and you want to set up that framework. So organizations can set up models or frameworks that help you to learn from feedback in areas like obviously your pricings or your promotions, or the product choices from the consumers. What we then do then is the AI role or the technology role is to help businesses really see what pricing strategies are working best for them. And then obviously we want to learn from each sale. So we really do break it down to really understand what's working and what's not working, so that you can really start to deliver, as we say, the right price at the right time to the right customer. So as I've already talked about, AI is only a tool, and it can only work with the data and the way that it's being driven, but also as well as that human insight and that human expertise as well. So it really is about balancing the technology with human insight. So human insight and human expertise is still a key factor into how we work with our clients who are adopting intelligent pricing. People are still needed. Heads of department, managers, directors, price managers, category managers are still needed to guide and also to interpret and then adjust what the technology suggests. If sales targets or if goals aren't being met, this feedback and this insight then goes back into the loop, into the model, to then be redefined. As I said, AI, intelligent pricing, is not going to revolutionize your business overnight. It's about learning what's working, what's not working, where are the key areas for improvement in order for you to achieve that short, medium, and long-term objective. So becoming a hyper-learning organization is really about building data-driven processes. For learning to be effective, feedback needs to be captured in a measurable way. Our approach to learning and improving obviously combines the human insights with AI to help businesses rely on more than just instincts, making it easier to adapt even when employees change. And then you need to have that continuity as well through technology. So when the feedback and knowledge are built into the model, a business can really learn and doesn't have to solely rely on what people say it needs to do. So yeah, we really like to work with companies, help them to adopt, as what we call it, that hyperlearning, the framework. So what we thought it would be quite a good introduction is to really show you the true complexities when it comes to pricing. So this is one of our existing clients here at Sunweb. I don't know if you've seen it or not. If you haven't, I would definitely go and take a look at it. We've just released some video case studies on Sunweb and obviously on this information here on the page. So I'm fairly sure I'm definitely guilty of it. And myself, we've definitely booked the holiday or a package holiday. So in industries like travel, and obviously in particularly Sunweb, pricing is extremely complex because there's so many different moving parts to it. You've got your flights, you've got your transfers, you've got your hotels, you've got your duration, you've got your star ratings, you've got your meal plan, you've got your seats, etc. All of them are rely on one another in order to build that package. What we found and what we learned was with this particular client, they were having a constant battle with limited availability and customer expectations. So all their travel package or products are only available while all of their components, obviously seats on planes, beds in hotels, were in stock, or obviously they were available. Additionally, customers have a certain price to quality expectations. You wouldn't want to be paying a 5-star price for a 3-bed bed and breakfast, meaning that they'll only pay a price that matches what they feel the experience is worth. For example, and as we just obviously touched on, they want to have the best time to fly. They want to fly at probably peak times as well, summer holidays, festive periods. So the balance between the price and the perceived value is obviously crucial when it comes to building a package. So how they wanted technology to support them and managing the complexity of what they were doing manually. So as their pricing became a lot more complicated, it was becoming increasingly difficult for them to manage all of their pricing manually. So they sought a technology that was going to be able to provide them not just the support, but obviously help them to monitor, but also adjust prices more effectively. Using AI has given them a more systematic approach. It obviously makes it easier for prices to keep prices in line with demand, and also maximizing a potential revenue by addressing gaps that were probably missed when they were doing things manually. We've obviously seen some huge steps forward, not just as far as the efficiency is concerned, but they're now able to adjust around about 10 million price points per day. That's been an increase of 600% prices daily. This scale and this adjustment has just really helped them to be more responsive to market changes, but also responsive in demand fluctuations. We've also really improved their their efficiency as well, improving it by 50%. So now that team or their team is able to go away and do all of the cool stuff when it comes to looking at the data and building other strategies. So I think some of the key takeaways from this is, in order to have an approach to complex pricing, there needs to be pretty much a step-by-step approach. Tackling complex pricing requires breaking down the process into manageable parts. Remember, it's not going to change a business overnight. By user business, they're starting with smaller, simpler tasks and gradually building up, the business can adapt more easily. By embracing AI and pricing solutions, it's a learning journey. You want to start by small, learn from each step, and adjust as needed. That the team and the organization understands, and these tools will be utilized effectively. You need to make sure that it's not just about changing the system, it's about changing the way that you approach pricing in order to obviously drive and achieve your goals. So what we see here is this is just really looking at some data of one of our existing clients. We did some A/B testing where we looked at actually seeing, well, if we took the same products, exactly the same products from the same product group, and if we applied one to optimization and we applied some not obviously to optimization, what the results were going to be. So as you can see, there's though, even though the industry changes and demand changes, the margin that the products that were attributed to optimization were able to increase, but then also be consistent as the algorithm grew. The products that weren't attributed to AI and algorithms, as you can see there, it is fairly clear to see the orange graph and the performance has really dipped against the others. So we work with all of our clients. We really want to build a business case. We appreciate that all of the businesses are completely different, even though there are some similarities. We really want to understand, what is the current revenue, what is going to be your the potential ROI. We tend to see that we would expect to see a minimum of anywhere between a 2 to 5% margin increase. Every percentage increase, as it says, is realized based on a percentage of leads. What we would also want to do is look at the operational business case. So how can we improve the accuracy and the consistency across the department, and also with your pricing the strategies? How can we help you to optimize prices based on various factors such as a demand, competition, and customer behavior? How can we automate some of those daily, mundane, laborious tasks that not only saves time but also helps to reduce the element of human error? How can we bring an enhanced price communication with customers, obviously ensuring that you deliver transparency, but also assisting you to build that trust. What we want to do, and what we'll always do, is we want to deliver and ensure that there is a single source of truth and a single source of information. There's lots of information, there's lots of tools, there's lots of different applications and systems that are being used across the business. By adopting an intelligent pricing tool, you're able to centralize all of your data, All that data is then obviously managed, tracked, analyzed, to give you the true insights as far as the performance is concerned, where you may well be leaving money on the table. And obviously, of course, we want to ensure that you are fully aligned with the omnibus, the directive as well. Vincent, I think you're on mute.
Yes, thanks. Classic. Yeah, thanks, Andy. So we can dive into the questions that have popped up in the different channels. So we can check one on LinkedIn, I think. It's from Jan Willem. Yes, how can we leverage AI to improve agile processes without risking the teams become too dependent on technology, making them less flexible in responding to change? I think that is a good question to ask. I think in general this is really important, right? So if you would blindly trust any AI solution that's running in your business, then eventually that becomes your, let's say, most trusted advice partner in the processes that you do, right? So I think in general, what you want to achieve as a business is that an AI becomes supportive instead of that it takes over the processes that you have running within your business. So see it more as a as what Andy also said in this presentation, as a tool that supports you, but it is not overtaking all the processes that you have. So use it to do to give advice, use it to do your data analysis, use it to maybe have a more advanced analysis across anything that you do, but always be keen on that you use it as a supportive tool instead of as the final tool that can do anything, and that you just 100% rely on the output that comes out of the suggestion that it makes. Then we have some other questions as well, of course, the ones that in general rolls into Simpson and the questions and the trajectories that we do. So one of them is how does AI-based pricing affect your overall margin and profit? Andy, do you want to answer that one, or?
Yeah, I just can't. So what that sound there? Sort of marginal profit. I think the way that it'll work with you is that it's really going to help you to analyze a lot more data and a lot more insight when it comes to the overall performance, be it either a product or an area or a country, or even a channel to which you're selling. So it gives you a lot more data to make more informed a decision. As we've already said, we typically see anywhere between a 2 to 5% increase on margin from firms that are adopting and using AI and machine learning to drive their pricing strategies forward.
Nice, thanks. The other one is how is our data protected when we use AI pricing? I think if you look at the deployment of AI models, right? To say it in such a way, there are a couple of ways to go about it, right? So we all know if you use the free version of, for instance, ChatGPT, if you don't have to pay for it, you are the product, right? That's the general consensus there. So what it means, like if you put your questions in a general AI, where you don't pay for, then that data is also used as trading data, right? There are also licenses that you can buy, that you can incorporate large language models in your environment where you can protect your own data and data set. Next to that, we see also an increase in models that are deployed in the open source environment. In the open source, you can just download, for instance, the complete model and run them on premise. So meaning that it is, for instance, not completely run in the cloud. So the approach in the way you do it, it depends on your organization, but it can be, of course, completely safe and that your data is completely secured. It really depends on your approach, which types of models you use, and what, of course, is your company policy. But there is a possibility to do that in a secured environment, and that you are not vulnerable with the data that you process through an LLM or a different type of model. Is the AI customizable to our specific business needs, or is the one-size-fits-all solution? Annie, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Simpson, there's always the element of the foundation and what our AI models can do. But as with all, we would rather work with you as a business to really understand your objectives, really understand your goals, how, based upon what Simpson is today, challenges can we solve. So then if we need to look at some bespoke development, like what we've done with a couple of our existing clients, yeah, we will always approach it and we'll always kind of see what you want it to do and then build it with you. So yeah, it's we would rather us fit Simpson into your business rather than you fit in your existing business into how Simpson works.
Nice. Then we have, will AI help us to manage your stock levels better? This is obviously a question that comes in. I think management of stock levels is also a practice on its own, right? Because it can be really specific in certain businesses. Of course, with pricing, you can incentivize the consumer to buy more if you want to be aggressive on a specific price or to get a promotion out or whatsoever. So from that perspective, for sure, we can contribute to get ideal stock levels. The other side of that story is also what is then ideal stock level, right? Given market circumstances, how we look at this, we just want to get that objective in. An objective of a business, at least the ones that we work with, is that they, for instance, have a target margin for the year, what they want to achieve. If you have a certain stock level, but you can monetize pretty well out of it, although becomes at a certain point that you have quite a bit of stock, but you still are monetizing quite well, you can take that situation from a different perspective, right? So from a stock perspective, it's maybe less healthy. Seeing the market circumstances, we are still monetizing quite well. So what is our approach? So I think there's always a multi-dimension approach in terms of what we want to achieve as a business, and one is less driving than the other, right? So you have to make a decision how you want to make that approach. From the pricing perspective, we would always align that with what is the company's objective. So are we going for a revenue strategy or going for a margin strategy? And if that is a margin strategy, we just want to squeeze out as much margin from those products as possible. If it becomes eventually a revenue strategy, of course, for us, the count of the deals becomes most important, and then we will push for that one. So it depends, but of course, it can contribute to that. How we evaluate stock eventually internally, it depends also what type of business you are organized. If you can have a really long shelf life for those products, or that you have, for instance, life cycle stages, and by the next year you have like a newer product, and the value of that product has decreased quite a bit, and of course there can be different circumstances, and then the optimization in terms of price can be done through life cycle stages, but also valuation of the inventory. But these are two different concepts to take into consideration. And the final question is then, how frequently does the AI need to be updated or retrained? Just as the final one, so in general, what we see is once you have connected your AI or your LLM to the system and you will ask a question, it will always work with the latest data set. So it is constant, right? So at least in our systematic approach, we would input the data each 5 minutes just to keep that cycle going. And if you would ask a question now, then the data of 5 minutes ago will be also in that model to be questioned. So the updating is not like once a week, once a month, once a year. It's just a constant process where we want to keep focus upon and make sure that we work with the latest insights that we could get. All right, then I think we are just before the end of the time of this session till 4 o'clock. We don't see any other questions. On behalf also on Andy, I all want to thank you for participating in this webinar. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to answer any questions you may have. And we hope that with this webinar, we have given you a bit of more insights in terms of how AI can be deployed in your organization and if it should be on your roadmap for 2025. As said, we wish you all luck with the continuation of your business, and hopefully we meet soon. All right. Enjoy your day.
Bye.